Welcome back to Legend of the Stars qualifying tournament number 3. Let's just get that up there. There we go. 2017 championship. So, of course, we are doing the qualifiers. This means that the top players from this tournament head through into the end of year finals. We've already had qualifiers 1 and 2. We've got a bunch of competitors. You can go into the forums and check who those are if you really wish to. But we are trying to select a few more of our top players for that competition today. We've had some pretty epic games so far. We've seen an unusual amount of nuclear arsenal at play and also a large number of T4s, but that could be something to do with the maps that have been chosen. In any case, huge thanks to Legend of the Stars as usual for supporting this tournament and making it all possible. Huge thanks to Taquito and everybody else who's helping organize. And huge thanks to everybody else involved at Forged Alliance Forever. Make sure you head on over to faforever.com, and I even have a video for that. There you go. Yeah, that thing. Make sure you head over there if you don't already play and join us to build massive scale robots and things of death and have lots of fun in the community. Alright, without any further ado, we're going to head on to Twin Rivers because who is playing? We've got WinstonSmith taking on Tex, and I don't believe it is drunk Tex, I think it is regular Tex. So let's head on over to Twin Rivers and see how these guys are going to get on. Alright, and let's go. So we are on Twin Rivers of Spammy Spam. Who are we looking at? We have got Tex in the blue corner. He's going to go UEF. He's going to throw down his first land factory. We can see there's a plan for a couple of Tech 1 power generators, followed by some mass extractors and a few more Tech 1 power gens. We have got in the yellow corner WinstonSmith. He's going to go Seraphim, so that means Zuis and Ilshavers. He's going to throw down his first land factory. We can see the plan is to also get down a couple of Tech 1 power generators and then get those core mass extractors as well. So these guys are going to need to quickly expand out towards these side panels and out to the back of their bases as well. They're going to need to defend against raids, which should be coming any second now. There we go. There's the first mech marine out that is going to go and try and do a little bit of horrible raiding and mess up the expansion plans of Winston. That is going to be interesting to see if he can pull that off. But these guys need to get those expansions underway while doing their own raiding, because if you don't raid the other player, they will kill you. Winston has got just about all of his core mixes all up and running. He's working on that third power gen, and then it looks like he is going second air and then going third land again by the looks of it. So he's going to get a little bit of intel up and running. These guys do need to make sure they have some interceptors, otherwise bombers will absolutely wreak havoc. Though fortunately neither of these guys is Aeon, which are particularly susceptible to those Tech 1 bombers. You can see a little bit of banter in the chat there. Do you have a try-hard build order from Winston? Tex says, last time I was borderline blackout. So that is the drunk Tex that we're all familiar with, the one that we know and love. But where is he? I don't know. We don't have him today. We're going to have some kind of sanity perhaps, and much less amusing play, I would suspect. We can see he is going for a second land factory, which is going to give him a little bit more spam up and running very, very quickly. WinstonSmith, oh, here we go. He's actually putting that second land down. It was the opposite order from what it looked like. And he's going to go third air. So those guys both going to have that second land factory up for spammy spam spam. And interestingly, very little rating. We do have this one mech marine which is absolutely brilliantly placed, but unfortunately not enough micro, and the engineer's going to survive with 48 HP, and the mech marine is having to dodge for its life, but it doesn't manage to do so, and the Tham finishes him off. So unfortunately no successful rating there from Tex. but no raiding at all so far from Winston, though that could be about to change because we do have a couple of Thams up here. It looks like it might be a slightly more serious raid coming in. He might throw enough to deal with a single tank and come out with enough to still kill mexes. We've got a Snoop out front there and just a single striker defending this side of the map, so Tex will be looking to see if there are any aggressive moves coming from Winston. He will be able to spot it, but right now I don't know that he can do much about it. He's going to have to get a few more of these tanks. He's got these 3 here in the middle. He could potentially redirect those and help out on that left-hand side, but he will have it on radar now. He will see the signatures from all of those guys, so he'll be aware of what is coming. We should see him backing up this engineer because he doesn't have enough time to respond. It looks like he's going to be using his ACU for that expansion, so probably not really caring too much if he loses this NG, because the ACU, not APU, because he's not an AMD processor, will be there momentarily. Alright, we've got a scout overhead from Winston, so he is well aware of what is going on in the Tex camp, and we've got a scout over the back here, so Tex will be able to see this expansion down the back that is well underway for Winston. They're looking pretty even. They both captured 3 mass extractors apiece, although slightly better play there from Tex in capturing 1 bonus one. So if we look at the scoreboard in terms of generated eco, though, we're looking at 29 to 21 in favor of WinstonSmith. Why is that? I think that is probably just the extra expansion speed over the side, or is that reclaim? What is happening there? Let's just quickly switch to there. 33 and 31. Okay, it's much more even. It could have been a temporary power stall from Tex that was doing it. Let's have a quick look at his eco. Yeah, he is pretty low on power, and that would have been hurting his income while he was bottlenecked. Alright, Winston has been dealt with. We can see there was enough tanks in play there from Tex to finish off the job. The ACU hovering around as well, making sure that Winston doesn't gain too much. There's a couple more tanks coming in for raiding, but the ACU for Tex should be fine. An engineer, though, goes down on this side of the map. Not quite enough to deal with the 4 Thams that have come in. There are a few tanks hovering around back here, but they really need to get forward and make some effort. Come on, guys. Meanwhile, it looks like Winston is going to probably just scoot around the side, use those 4 tanks after he's managed to take out that engineer, slow down the build for Winston a little bit. He's going to come around the back and be able to take out these mass extractors, and Tex is going to have to respond. He can even see right now with that scout that there is nothing that could be responded, so we should momentarily see a little bit of an assault of at least a couple of those tanks heading around the back, but it looks like Winston is probably a little bit too busy elsewhere, perhaps over here ordering this edge build on this factory so that he can claim this island without having a transport. That'll give him an extra 4 mass extractors. Tex so far not looking like he is going to move towards that island at all, and it looks like he doesn't have a lot of air up and running. Is it still just that single air factory? It looks like it is, so he's not going to have any capacity to spare from his interceptor production to get a transport out in the immediate future. Winston was a little bit slow with moving those tanks in, and it gave Tex a plenty of time to bring a whole stack of strikers in and ward those away. So it looks like Tex is going to be able to keep his area of the map secure, even though he was a little bit late in doing so. We've got a stream of units coming out. How many Tech 1 land factories have we got? Well, there's another one just come out online. So it looks like 7 are now running for Winston. He's got 1 more over the side for this expansion. And how are we looking over here for Tex? He has got 6 in the main base there, so 1 less. He doesn't have 1 over the expansion, so Tex is suffering a little bit from a lack of build power in terms of spitting those units out of the factory. That will only come into play though if they have more than enough eco to do it, and right now the bottleneck is actually power and not mass for Tex. And let's look at Winston and see how he is looking. Well, he is severely bottlenecked on power, and he is all out of mass as well, although that might even out a little bit once the mass empties. Alright, Tex is pushing down on the right hand side there, but unfortunately pushing directly into Winston's ACU. That doesn't always work the best with your Tech 1 army to take an ACU head on with a dozen or so units. It tends just to be a mass donation, and we can see there is quite a few wrecks down there for him as well. Tex also losing a few tanks over this side, trying to push through unsuccessfully, and again just leaving a bit of reclaim. It looks like though Winston is really focusing on the right hand side. He's moving most of his forces across, and that actually opens up a little bit of an opportunity for Tex to get around the back and do just a little bit of damage to the eco, though I'm not sure it's going to be enough. WinstonSmith sitting a good 13, well the scoreboard's jumping around a little bit, but then he's perhaps not bottlenecking, maybe almost 20 mass per tick ahead, which is a pretty serious advantage. Tex, meanwhile though, has managed to sneak a raiding party down the bottom here, so even though he lost a few units in that push, he's still getting some around. That is going to cause a little bit of damage. There is even a radar, but it's paused right now because Winston is having such power trouble. This point defense is going up reasonably quickly, but it will not get completed, and these mexes will go down. So a little bit of a nice pickup there from Tex with that raid. He wasn't able to get all the way into the back here with those other raiding units, but he is looking a little bit light in terms of unit numbers, and that is probably because he has switched up some of his factories to T2. We can see there are pillars on the front line. How many has he got at this point? We have got the HQ, all of the others still at Tech 1, so he hasn't gotten any support factories yet, but those pillars are going to start to do quite horrible things to just the Tech 1 spam that is coming out from Winston. So we're probably going to see that Tech 2 upgrade from Winston as well. It's about, well, it's completed, and it's about 50% on the first Ilshiva, I do believe, that is going to be rolling out, or I should say walking out of the factory floor, and there it goes now. So now Winston has access to the revered Ilshiva, the overly powerful but a little bit more expensive Tech 2 bot from the Seraphim. The amazing quality that it has though is the range. It can sit back and pepper away at the enemy units with absolute disregard, and a good micro player can do absolutely fantastic things with them. They can be very hard to counter until UEF gets up to the Tech 3 phase, so we could be looking at Tex pushing to T3 reasonably soon because his pillars are going to be a little bit outgunned. Speaking of gun, there is a gun ACU, and he's just walking along. He's got some shield coverage, that's nice to see. So Tex really pushing up here. He's going to try and do some damage. If he can knock that Ilshiva factory offline, that would be amazing. But he has got a lot of units converging on his position. There's even Tech 2 point defense for good measure from Winston, and Tex is going to have to back on up out of here, overcharging the Ilshivas, so he is negating the effect that those T2 have for the time being, as long as he can withstand the power drain. And ooh, he is looking a little bit low on power. He only has a surplus of around about 100 power, so it's going to be quite big gaps between being able to overcharge. He's going to bring the ACU in though. He's probably pretty confident at this point that he has drawn in all of the units from Winston, and they have come across to the left here, and that probably is going to leave the right hand side a little bit more open, but that actually isn't the case because Winston's left a whole stack of FAMs down here. A couple of pillars come in. They are going to have a little bit of a hard time though against that number of FAMs plus a Tech 1 point defense, so probably not looking too well. But Tex is looking intent on pushing directly down here, knocking out this expansion. That's going to do some bad things for Winston's eco, but it still probably will only bring him back down in line with what Tex has now, and that potentially leaves Tex a lot of opportunity to push forward. Right, so meanwhile, Tex though, he's just pouring units in, so all of those factories, and look at all the factories now, absolute spamming is going on. Those guys are all just hammering forward, and Winston is actually starting to run out of units over on this left hand side. He does have some Ilshivas, he does have some Tech 2 point defense, but he doesn't have the unit count. If there's a lot of Lobos in the mix, and there's a reasonable amount, even if they just get their alpha strike away before they get killed, they can still rack up quite a bit of damage. We can see though that Tex's units are just spilling into the back of Winston's base. They're taking out this expansion. All the mass extractors in factory are gone down. We have got some pillars rolling into the back. We do have some emergency point defense that has gone up. Winston doing his best to try and keep this alive, but Tex coming up with a pretty good strategy here of drawing all of the forces away to the left from Winston and then bringing the rest of his army around down to the bottom and knocking out those expansions, trying to do some eco damage, and that's actually pretty much evened up the generated eco. Unfortunately though, Tex losing all of those units to Tech 1 point defense without taking out any of the mass extractors. Not quite as successful over there as it has been on this right hand expansion. Tex though just continuing to pour the Lobos in, so we've got Lobos and Pillars are the mainstay of his army, and we can just see the big strikes coming down there. Winston having to dance for his life every time one of those Lobos shells hits. It rips away a pretty hefty percentage of his health. He is flanked though by Elshevers at this time, so those guys are just going to be able to rip away all of the Lobos that come in, and those are actually just turning into mass donations. So Tex is going to have to be careful not to just drip feed those guys in and allow a whole lot of reclaim. Alright, the eco is actually fairly even given that Winston has got both of these islands. So Tex either forgetting or not really caring about either of these islands, leaving the 4 mass extractors apiece to Winston to just take, and wow, that is giving a staging platform for drops. We see a whole stack of Thams coming in and another stack of Thams on one of these transports, and I don't think there is much that Tex has to be able to deal with that. Most of his units are focused forwards. He's now redirected some of them, but that is going to be pretty much as effective as Tex's entire raid down the bottom before, because that is going to knock out very, very quickly all of the mass extractors before Tex can respond. It looks like maybe just this one down here will be the only one to actually be saved. Well, maybe there is 120 HP left on that, so we'll have to see whether that goes down. But these two here, they are goners. And Tex is pushing back towards the center. There's still not an overwhelming number of Elshevers. There's enough pillars in the mix. The ACU with its overcharge out on the front line, that is enough to cause quite a bit of grief to Winston's defenses there. And look how quickly that point defense is losing its HP, and down it goes. I'm not sure if the second one is even going to get completed because those engineers are going to go bye-bye really quickly. That's going to open up a pretty good gap for Tex to just push in, and there is an awful lot of units now. There are a few point defense around. There is a lot of Elshevers. Tex has to just be a little bit careful still that he's not just leaving reclaim. And actually, he probably needs to be careful he doesn't get caught out, because all of his units are evaporating. He's down into the yellow. He does have 3-star veterancy. He's got 12,000 HP left on it, but he is being surrounded by Elshevers right now. He really needs to get all of his units in to support that ACU, managing to get a 4th-star veterancy, still sitting on 10,000 HP. But he really needs to get rid of those Elshevers, and fast. Fortunately for him though, the Elshevers standing still while they target the ACU, and that allows the Lobos to rain fire down on their heads. Tex down to 2,000 HP. What is going to go on here? 1,700. Is he going to be able to escape? It looks like he might have actually got away. Is that another rank of veterancy? Yes, it is. Back up to 7,000 HP. So Tex not going down at all. He is back up into the yellow, and he is still going at it. He's got his pillars rolling in, WinstonSmith overcharging them. He's got a ridiculous number of Lobos supporting his ACU. He's going straight back, and he's back up to 9,000 HP. He can get up to 21k with full regen on that ACU. Now, did he get any other upgrades? Let's just have a quick check. He did. He got nano. So on top of all that veterancy, he has got his nano upgrades. So that is a very beefy ACU. He is just absolutely going to town on all those units. He's got a Tech 2 power gen feeding his overcharge. Now we can see the plus 500 energy overflow from his production, and that means he can sit there overcharging all day. He is at maximum veterancy though. He will be struggling to get any more bumps in HP, but still sitting at 9200 compared to the 8900 on Winston. So these guys are actually very, very even right now, even though the HP bars are vastly different. And we can see the units just continuing to roll in. We can see all of those Lobos from those factories. Tex is just going to town. He is really going all or nothing at this point. We can see a whole lot of Zoes coming in. He is just trying to dodge that fire, but not quite able to dodge all of it. It's down to 7500 HP. Winston just really backing up. He's on 7200, while Tex is continuing to just pour units in. And we can see Tex getting raided at the back. There's a whole lot of Zoes dropping in there. That is going completely unmatched right now, undealt with, and that is because Tex is purely focused on this fight at the front, and he is doing a good job of pushing back those units, all the defenses from Winston. He is sitting there overcharging. He is up to 100 kills. He does have to make sure he doesn't run out of Tech 1 units from all of the point defense, but there's so many Lobos in the mix that they'll just rain fire from the heavens on those point defense, and we see how quickly they go down after they have been constructed. Tech's just having to keep dodging here. He's on 7000 HP. Just keeping on dodging while he tries to hit those Zoes, and we can see there's a big line of factories down here from Winston, who is just spamming out Zoe. So it's a Zoe versus Lobo war with the ACUs in the middle. Tex needing to dodge just a little bit better than that. Back down into the red on 4600 HP. You can see just how much damage a volley of Zoe fire will do if it manages to connect. So Tex has got to keep his dancing going. Tex looks like he might be stalling a little bit on the unit production, maybe because his eco is taking a bit of a hit in the back. He has managed to deal with it. He's got a whole bunch of units up there. There's a gap in production while they were redirected, but we can see now they're all coming back into play, and we have got another wave of attacks coming in from Tex. He is going all in still. He's looks like he's actually gonna roll down towards the bottom here, wipe out the Zoe production facility. He's also gonna be able to take out some of that power, and I suspect Winston might be struggling a little bit for power after he took a bit of a hit on his front lines there. We can see just the amount of wreckage at the front of his base. Right, the Lobos come rolling in. They're going to start damaging everything. The ACU, though, staying behind. It wants to sit back here and deal with any Ilshivas that pop out of those Tech 2 factories. Well, actually, it's still... No, there is a couple of support factories on line to keep producing Ilshivas, so he needs to stay on hand to be able to overcharge, and that's exactly what he does there. Very nicely done, and he just wipes that out. So the Tech 2 advantage that Winston has is not really playing out for him at all at the moment, because he can't get those guys close. He can't get his ACU in close to Tex's ACU because there's just too much damage coming out. He is all the way back here. He has managed to regen back up to 11,000. Has he done any upgrades? Well, he did get the gun upgrade while all of that was going on after he backed up to just give himself a little bit more DPS that he can try and spit out. Meanwhile, though, Tex is continuing his rampage down here. He really needs to hold off with these strikers, though, and let the Lobos go in first and finish off this point defense, because those PDs are absolutely ripping those to shreds. Let me just fix that minimap. There we go. Absolutely ripping them to shreds, so he needs the Lobos in, and that's what he's got now, and we can see how quickly those go down. The engineers will go down as well to the ranged fire from the Lobos. Looks like Tex's T1 army is now taking on Winston. Winston down to 9,500 HP, so he's taken a bit of a beating, but he himself is able to use Overcharge to negate those Tech 2 units. That's going to keep him running a little bit longer, but he's not quite as survivable right now as that UEF com with Nano and full 5-star vet. We've got just the 2-star veterancy on Winston's ACU, so definitely not as powerful just for the time being. We can see a whole smattering of Tech 2 point defense going down from Winston because he is just trying to stay alive, but he is doing fantastically well in terms of eco because he still holds those islands. He can launch raids from there, he can build power. We can see that's happening over here. That's going to keep his power grid nice and safe. That's a pretty good play from him, and that could be the only undoing here for Tex. If Tex loses this, it will be because he is not able to dismantle Winston's eco, because Winston has it spread around just too much in places that Tex cannot get. Tex needs to just keep overcharging those Ilshivas He will do so, but he's taking fire from those point defense, and you can't dodge those beam weapons. You can see they're just connecting every single time. He's sitting on 10k HP, so still deceptive. That yellow HP bar looking like he might be a bit sick, but he is actually continuing in full force. He can come down and start dealing to the engineers and dealing to those point defense. He's down to 7,000, so he's lost about a third of his health in the last few seconds. He really can't stick around for too long. He needs to get a bunch of Lobos in, focus fire those point defense, and make sure they are destroyed while he just overcharges all the Ilshivas that come out of the factories. He is doing a very nice job, though, of bringing engineers up to the front, though. He's got them all the way up here. We can see the attack move out of the factory, so those guys are going to be able to reclaim at huge distance from that attack move. We can see the beam there just doing absolutely fantastic things for his eco. Let's have a look at the total mass at the moment. We've got 84k to Winston, 67 to Tex, so Tex still being outclassed in the total eco production. 18 reclaim to the 12 reclaim of Tex. Looks like Tex has given up a little bit. He got right down into the red, just 4,300 at the moment remaining on that ACU, so looking very sick indeed. And we've got another upgrade for Winston. That's probably going to be, it's T2 in fact, so he's going to throw down that Tech 2 defensive net, I think, and it's going to give him a little bit more of an HP boost on that ACU as well. And meanwhile, he's still got a ton of a reclaim floating around. Though all the stuff from fighting further out, Tex has managed to grab really successfully. Ilshivas, though, without the support of the ACU from Tex, those Ilshivas are going to be able to rip into all of this T1, and Tex is going to have to back those up. And he's even built factories right on the front lines up here. He was really confident about his string of production, but he has managed to clear out this bottom part of the base and keep it pretty clear. He is taking a lot of unnecessary fire now from these 2 point defenses that are guarding, but once he gets those out, he is actually pretty free and clear to have another crack at this back base here. If he can knock those out, Winston will be almost entirely relying on these. Winston should probably look at getting these at T2, and look, that's exactly what we're seeing. He is starting to put those up to T2 so that he has a bunch of resources in case of an emergency, and that emergency may still eventuate. Even though Tex has had to pull his ACU right back, he's still looking reasonably dangerous. We've got more drops coming in. Where are those headed? I'm not quite sure what the order of the day is. There, it's a ferry. Nice to see a ferry point there being used by Winston, but he's going to bring a whole lot of Zoes in. And there is Tech 2 mass extractors to be had there, so that is going to hurt Tex a little bit more. Tex actually looking slightly ahead in terms of generated eco right now, but a few more Zoe drops could put a stop to that. Tex probably wants to think about dropping a little bit on these islands. In fact, there we go, and that's exactly what he's done. He's dropped down, he's starting to take out those eco. It'd be absolutely fantastic for Tex if he was able to pick up some upgrading mixes that were just about at T2 but not quite there yet, because then the entire investment is in there for Winston, but they have the HP of a Tech 1 mass extractor. He takes 2 of those guys out. That's going to do a little bit more of a dent. Tex still managing to maintain the lead. He's bringing his ACU back into the forefront. He's lost all of those factories there, but the Ilshivas are having to back up now in the face of that ACU, which is back up to 15k health with that nano. That is very, very OP right now. We can see the units for Tex also having to back up on the right, because there's a whole stack of Zoes coming out from Winston, and there's a couple of Ilshivas leading the charge. They are just trying to clear that out and re-secure it for Winston. Tex has moved his assault forces on this island right up, but unfortunately he is just bringing them into range. If he keeps them moving though, he should be able to dodge the Zoe fire quite well. There's only Zoes here. Winston obviously preparing just for drops and only putting Zoes down, no PD, no tanks. That actually makes it really hard to defend against a couple of tanks that get dropped, because a bit of micro will keep those tanks alive for a very long time. Tex is continuing his reclaim game. There's still a pretty good field of reclaim to be had up here. There's a decent number of T1 wrecks. It's all been cleared out around the base of Winston though, so Winston managing to feed off that quite effectively. But Tex wanting to make sure he doesn't get these units caught off guard. They are all Tech 1 artillery, well, just about. He does not want to get those caught stationary where the ACU, the Ilshivas, are just going to mow them down. So Tex is having to back on up. And what is this? This is a pretty serious drop this time. Tex has put 3 transports together. He's going to drop those guys down this way. If he micros those even just a little bit, they're going to absolutely have a field day with those Zoes, and he might even be able to take that island. We could even see him throwing down some mass extractors on there in the near future if he's successful with that. We've got the ACU leading the charge again here. All the Ilshivas have been dispatched, meaning the Tech 1 units left from Winston are easy mop up, and Tex, look at that, back up to nearly full health. He is now 21,000 HP, so I suspect we'll probably be seeing a fairly aggressive push from Tex once again. Well, possibly he's actually just going to back that army up a little bit. Probably the idea here is to lead with the ACU because it is a damage sponge. It can dish out a whole lot of damage. It can take that 21k worth of damage without him losing any single bit of investment. As long as he keeps the ACU alive, of course, he will be good to go. But it looks like he is going to maybe reposition his army to try and hit the base again, although I suspect there's probably a little bit too much T2PD. How much of that survived? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Not a whole lot. It would be relatively easy to sneak a few units around the back and do a little bit of eco damage. But now we have the T2 Guncom from Winston doing the same kind of thing that has just been happening to him, just pushing up with the ACU, leading the charge and dealing out damage. He's up to 4 veterancy on that ACU. Wow. Right, he is just going to back up a little bit. He probably needs to be quite careful, actually. I think Tex has spied an opportunity here. And that opportunity is to bring his forces around that central mountain and sandwich the ACU for Winston between these two armies. And there's actually quite a lot of damage potential in here. All of these Lobos have a very high alpha strike. There's a bunch of pillars in there. And then we've got this massive beefy ACU coming in from this side, as well as all the units. And this could be very bad for Winston. I can see him having to duck into the water here to keep himself alive. That would be a little bit difficult for him, although he does have pretty good air control at the moment, which means that he would be able to spin up a Tech 2 transport and use that to evac his ACU out of there. That is one potential avenue that we might be seeing, but he is looking in a pretty bad spot right now. I tell you, I would be worried if I was him, looking at this massive field of blue converging on his ACU. In comes Tex's commander. He is going to start peppering away. He's probably going to be overcharging those Ilshis as soon as they get into range. He is just leading the charge, taking out those Zoes, and Winston is looking very, very dodgy here. If Tex was able to win air control, he could get a quick T2 air factory upgrade and pop out some torpedo bombers, because we can see Winston now making a beeline for the water. Well, no, he's thinking about it. He's just dodging around a little bit. Tex taking quite a lot of damage, down to 13k HP, well, up to 20,000 for Winston. So that's still a very hardy commander. It's going to be very difficult to kill. But Winston is going to have to duck into the water. That has, however, left a wide opportunity up the top here for this Ilshiva army to pop through from Winston. So unless Tex can actually make use of it, and he has, he's got torpedo bombers out. He got that Tech 2 air upgrade. I think he probably started that on track as soon as he spotted where Winston's ACU was. So now Winston taking damage from that. It's going to take a little while to get through it, and in come all the interceptors from Winston. This is going to be absolutely crucial now. If Tex was able to keep those torpedo bombers alive, he's got a bit of flack in the mix with this army. He might just be able to take enough of those interceptors out, but I'm not sure if he can. But if he could somehow pull that off, he will be able to kill this commander over time, but he just needs that time to be able to do it. And Tex doesn't really have a lot of time. We can see this Ilshiva army up here. He doesn't have a Tech 3. Oh, he does have Tech 3. But he is still building Tech 2 units. That is interesting to see. So Tech's currently still investing in pillars. The economy's definitely shifting back towards Winston's favour, 97 to 59. We can see that those drops were ultimately unsuccessful down here for Tex, so he wasn't able to do it, and Tex says, not like this, just as in the Matrix, not like this. But this is exactly how it's going to go down. He drew all of his forces away. He was not able to kill the ACU. Very, very unfortunate for him. And it is getting his base absolutely wrecked. All of his production facilities are down. He's bringing his pillars in to try and deal with it, but he's got a lot of AA in that mix because he was trying to maintain that air control, well, trying to win air control, I should say. It did not pay off. He now has a whole lot of anti-air that isn't going to work. Down goes the T3 factory there. Not at all looking good. Wow. Unfortunately for Tex, he fought valiantly, he pushed hard, he pushed very, very hard. He almost managed to overrun the base, but just those Tech 2 point defense, not quite enough HP on that ACU. That was the end of it. Tex invested so much in that while not taking the islands, and that just let Winston run away with it. It looks like he may actually be able to finish off this group, but he's going to have nothing left for the next one that comes. And look at what is coming. There is a billion Zoes and a trillion Elshevas. Well, I exaggerate the numbers, of course, but a lot. There's a lot of things coming his way, and all he can do is sit back, enjoy the scenery, pew, pew, pew at anything that comes in range. And that will be the end of it. We'll see a convergence now on the ACU. He's back up to 21k HP, so he's not completely out of it yet, but he just doesn't have the support that he needs. Does he have the power to just keep overcharging? He's got not really any power. He's lost his energy storage even. He is slightly on the negative, so he is definitely going to have 0 overcharge, which is not the kind of thing you want to have in this situation. So we can say now, if anyone has any final words for Tex, you may say them now before he dies. And that will be very shortly, down to 5k, 3k, 2000 HP. The pillars cannot save you. And that is Tex versus WinstonSmith. We may all now offer a moment's silence for sober Tex, who we do not know nearly as well as drunk Tex. May he rest in peace. See you in the next matchup of the Legend of the Stars qualifying tournament number 3.